Welcome to episode 13 of the Triathlete Hour. I'm Kelly O'Mara, your host and the editor-in-chief of Triathlete magazine. One quick note, I apologize, our sound might be slightly wacky this week because I'm in the middle of moving, but we still have some great interviews. Later in today's show, we talk to Helle Frederiksen, the Danish Olympian, 70.3 champion, ITU long course world champ, and recently retired book author. Helle talks to us about whether she'd rather coach someone to win a race or win one herself, how she's enjoying exercising now versus training before, and the major injuries she overcame in her career. But first up, we have race director Gabriela Gallegos here to answer all your questions about what returning to racing looks like this year, what kind of changes to expect, and she tackles the big question of refunds. All that after this short break. If you've been paying attention to what the pros are doing, then you've probably heard about Whoop. Whoop is a fitness wearable that provides personalized insights on how recovered you are and how much stress you put your body through during the day. Each day when you get up, Whoop gives you a recovery score based on your sleep, resting heart rate, and heart rate variability. And the way it works is you wear the Whoop band around your wrist all day. And don't worry, it's 100% waterproof. It even tracks your heart rate while you're swimming. You can then analyze your activity and recovery levels in the app. And you can use features like Strain Coach, which gives you target workout exertion goals tailored to your body's recovery for that day. You can even set to tell you when you've hit your target strain effort for the day, like, okay, that was good, now you can stop. There's also a built-in sleep coach, which lets you know how much sleep you should be getting based on your expected activity level for the next day. And it tracks all your different sleep cycles. Whoop is offering 15% off right now with the code TRIATHLETE at checkout. Go to Whoop, WHOOP.com and enter Triathlete at checkout to save 15%. Sleep better, recover faster, and train smarter. Optimize your performance with Whoop today. All right, this week we're talking to Gabriela Gallegos, who heads up Race El Paso. So 6 races. You have 2 partner events now in Miami and in Austin. So it's a pretty big race company, especially for a medium size. Like, you've done a lot of cool things, getting like all women events going, reaching new communities. But I wanted to talk to you about this whole return to racing plan. Because you and I were talking last week about all the kind of issues with liability and insurance. And even the thing, why can't you give refunds? So let's start there. Why can't you give refunds? How are your events doing? Are you having to cancel everything?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I've got 5 events in El Paso, and those kind of vary in size. They're fairly small events in the triathlon world. And then one event that I produce in Tucson, and then the partner events in Austin and Miami. The refunds question is a big one. And as every other business is facing right now, being able to pay your staff and pay your contractors and pay your rent and kind of keep things going has been a big challenge. And I'm guessing I'm not alone that about 12 to 13 weeks ago, all income stopped. So you can pretty much predict how many people are registering each week and, kind of see those flows. If there's a jump in prices, you see a jump up. When all of the kind of lockdown and stay-at-home orders started, that pretty much ended. And understandably, right? Because we were all facing that uncertainty of like, who knows what this looks like. But from the race producer side, the uncertainty is still there, right? And so we're trying to manage that and have gotten pretty creative about it, which has been, a new challenge, but a good one. And I think people have come around to, virtual racing and some of the other alternatives that we've been trying to put out there.
What a lot of people ask me is, how come your insurance, because every race company has insurance in case of like a natural disaster, how come your insurance doesn't cover COVID, or does it cover COVID? If you have to cancel because of COVID, does your insurance kick in?
Well, so most of the insurance, policies are covering liability for athletes, volunteers, staff, sponsors, right? So it's if you're getting hurt at the event. It's not necessarily because, your venue is no longer available and you already put down your deposit. So it's not necessarily the financial coverage, but the liability coverage if something were to go wrong during your event.
Okay. So it's not like, hey, you're going to be out money, here's covering you. It's just like if someone crashes.
If I bought too many shirts, nobody's going to pay me back for that, right?
Got it. Okay. And so where are you guys at right now? You've had to cancel, reschedule some events. I mean, we were talking about, you're in Texas, so obviously that's a different climate than, say, your event in Miami, where your location's literally a field hospital right now. So
right. Yeah, so it's a constantly changing environment, and each spot is a little bit different. So even within El Paso, the venues that are city venues are treating things a little bit differently than the venues that are county venues. So even some of that within the same municipality is a little bit different. Mighty Mujer El Paso was originally scheduled for April 24th. And so I think it was late February, we moved that to July 25th. And that now has been turned into a virtual race. Okay. And that's for a number of reasons. So the city has decided to not permit races or to not permit like gatherings at public parks until at least September. And then it's kind of cautiously moving forward from there. So that kind of already, made it impossible. But we've got other challenges too, right? Like our city pools are not opening this summer. And so we don't have kind of universal access to swimming. There's some country clubs that are open, but that's kind of it. And so that, isn't really open. So getting people ready for it was another consideration.
Right.
Another race that I had, which is a virtual duathlon that was supposed to be Memorial Day weekend. Also, we changed into a virtual race. Others we still have scheduled, right? So I'm looking at August 30th for another triathlon and a kids splash and dash the day before. We're trying to make decisions at least 2 months in advance of everything, right? So that people have time to train. And then also so that we have time to get people to register, right? And to feel some certainty with the race happening. And those are the two things that I think are the big questions, right? Like, will the venue be available, but then will we be able to have the certainty with registrations that's going to cover the costs to even produce the event?
Right. I mean, that is what I'm hearing from a lot of athletes is the uncertainty is what's frustrating for them right now. I think they get, the situation in the world, but they want to hear from their race director, from Ironman, from whoever it is, yes or no, this race is happening so I can book my hotel, book my whatever, all my stuff. And I think that's sort of like, that's the big thing that's like driving everyone crazy right now.
Right. Which is tough, right? Because it varies. So for example, the county facility that I use for these races at the end of August, they're deciding on a month to month and to some extent week to week basis. So I will know probably at the end of July if I can hold this race on August 30th, which is not enough time, right? Yeah. So I'm kind of facing those decisions and figuring out, does that mean that I postpone that one? Or does that mean that that one is just not going to happen this year and we're going to make it certain, but err on the side of not being able to produce it? And honestly, every part is different, right? So like, we can hopefully say that certain things will be able to happen, but as the climate changes, that certainty is uncertain again, So as the only certainty we're able to say is like, no, it's not happening, right?
Right. You could just make that call early, yeah. Which is obviously what a lot of places are doing, just to commit to that. But if you do go ahead with races, you have some in September, like rescheduled for September. You have one rescheduled for December. Now we're talking about this return to racing plan. USA Triathlon put out guidelines. Ironman put out guidelines. They overlap a lot. There's some very similar themes like self-reliance, not doing in-person, whatever, the briefings, all this stuff that I think we would have been okay with like earlier, like not forcing everyone to walk through the gift shop, right? Like, and then there's also like limiting touch points, educating volunteers, a lot of education stuff. What parts of those are you guys considering as you're looking at return to racing?
So every part of the production involves kind of all these details, right? And that's what makes it run smoothly. So thinking of it from start, as far as like packet pickup, number assignments, body marking, all of that sort of stuff, racking, to all the way through, like, what does it look like if there's a certain number of people on a swim course? How do you space those out? So I think race producers are going through every single aspect of that. And each production is slightly different, right? Like some of them may be space limited, where that venue means that they can't triple the size of the transition area to make enough space.
Right.
Or, they're not able to bring in 3 times the amount of equipment to have bike racks so that there's, 4 bikes per rack instead of 10. Those sorts of questions. The going virtual on other aspects, I agree, are probably going to be a good thing, right? Like getting a video about like how to check in and what to expect and like go through the pre-race meeting sort of thing, like on a video is now, I think people are going to be pretty used to that part. Other aspects of it are really trying to figure out how do you limit contact and how do you make the actual contact safe, right? So I would expect to see, hand washing stations and hand sanitizer and volunteers in masks and, staff being very cautious with, how you are to line up, space out as you're lined up, when you're checking in your bike, how many people are allowed to come in, trying to do all of the things that we're being told by public health officials are important, the keeping your hands clean, keeping your space and wearing a mask, right? So all of those things are going to be incorporated into every aspect. But the in-person stuff that can be done virtually will probably be done virtually. And the stuff that cannot is going to be more metered, right? So maybe you have a check-in time that has an hour window, and a limited number of people have that hour window, and then another group has a second hour window. You'll probably see more staff because there will be things like temperature checks, maybe even a COVID-19 survey when you arrive to see if you have,
do you have COVID-19, right?
Symptoms, right? Even the temperature check sometimes trips me out because I think at that point you should be actively sick.
I know.
Right?
And you're also when it's 104 degrees out, we all are hot. Yeah.
We're going to get hot.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think a big thing that to me, the big question are the pinch points and literally the density, right? Like, how do you do start corrals that look the way they look right now? I don't think you can. I think you literally have to have half the number of people or a third the number of people. And so is that something, you're weighing? Obviously you have smaller events, which I think smaller events are going to come back sooner and have look a lot more like what we're used to probably.
Right. Well, and they're easier to control, right? If you're dealing with 350 athletes, that's a very different animal than 3,500. You can space things a little bit differently. You can use more volunteers that can be more effective with a smaller number of people than if they're trying to deal with a large group. I would expect a lot of starts are going to start looking like time trial starts. So you're not going to have, mass, everybody get in and kind of start in a bunch in the water, but metering that out so that you can space it. So I expect that to be a little bit different. Same thing with finishes. There may be two different directions to go when you cross the finish line so that it doesn't get too bunched up.
Oh, okay.
Like post-race food, post-race medals, that'll probably all come prepackaged. Rather than, it be kind of out in the open and, you can pick your...
Post-race food never really seemed very clean in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're thinking about all those things. And obviously, what is your biggest event? It's like 500 people, 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm. About there. We have a half marathon at the end of the year that's around 750, but between 500 and 750 are the larger ones.
And I think a lot of people are starting to think, that may be what they do this year, are smaller local events. Is that kind of what you're hearing and you're locally in the community?
Well, I'm hoping that that's kind of the upside of all of this for all the local producers, right? This is a good thing. Returning to local racing is great, right? And that's a way to kind of be part of your community. You're not worried about, am I flying somewhere right now? Am I driving to another location and then kind of spreading around germs that I've brought with me or, that sort of thing. So I do hope that the local races are able to thrive and that people kind of rediscover those. I also think that they're going to be the ones that are more easily manageable and developed in a way that people feel safe returning to racing. I also think that, I'll feel better in a smaller crowd,
right.
And so other athletes are probably going to feel the same versus going to something that might have a few thousand people, if that's allowable at that point.
Yeah, which I'm not even sure, once we get to the fall, we're going to see these 50,000 person marathons and stuff. But the no travel is a big factor. I think that's what a lot of experts are saying is we're not really going to see destination races this year as much. So staying locally in your community. In terms of other issues besides the density, besides the education, besides the virtual, the big thing everyone wants to know, are they going to have to race in a mask?
Oh my goodness. So I don't even have a good answer for that one. My expectation is that it will be no as you're actively racing. I do expect that when you're running, there will probably be it'll be encouraged. I think that some race directors will probably be able to make that call and say this is going to be, for my race, this is what I feel is important to do here. If there's, any sort of local authority that they need to follow so that if, more than a certain number of people are in a group, they need to be wearing masks. I think it's a possibility, but I don't expect that to be a requirement for all of these races. And I think it's going to vary, just like right now, all the, stay-at-home orders are varying and what's open is varying. I think some of that is going to vary with local authority.
I'm going to have to make a recommendation because a lot of people ask me this, to the buff, like wearing a neck gaiter when you're running or biking.
So
that you can then
bought a few of those.
Yeah.
I bought a few of those to try it out because it is much more comfortable and you can take it down really easily,
exactly.
And your neck doesn't get burned, which is also nice.
So if you have it,
there's some benefits.
And then you can pull it up when you're in a dense crowd. It does help. I think that's definitely a way to, and then you're not running the whole time with something restricting your breathing when you're by yourself out in the middle of nowhere. So I'll just recommend
that. One other thing to mention is that there's some courses that I think we'll see change as well, because, if you think about an out and back course that maybe has 2 out and backs and you're crossing everybody multiple times in kind of a tight 2-lane situation, those might be changing,
right.
because those might just be like, what, there's going to be too many people in too much of a bunch to make this feel safe.
No, for sure. I think they're rethinking some of the loops, some of the out and backs. Definitely, single loop, smaller fields, carry your own stuff. Guys, everyone, you basically need to get into ultra distance trail running. I think that's the direction we're all going.
Yeah, like the water stations will very likely be self-serve, so they'll be set up for you, but you'll grab your own cup, which is not much of a modification, really, like that's a quick change to like reach over and grab your own cup rather than to get a handoff.
Right.
So some of them I don't think will be a major change or disturbance. It'll just have to, athletes as well as race directors, we need a lot of patience, and kind of a lot of latitude to figure this out. And hopefully the athletes who are going to the races are giving that, they're willing to assume the risk of joining into a group event that they know is taking as many precautions as possible, but is not the same as staying home, right? So if you're willing to kind of assume that, then I think an amount of patience and, kind of going with it and understanding that there are going to be modifications that are probably inconvenient and might take longer, but they are, doing the best that they can to make sure that things are safe for everyone.
And here's my last question. What about spectators? And because that is another factor that everyone's thinking, you usually come with like a crew.
Right. Yeah, right. So spectators are an interesting question. I expect potentially limited spectators. It might be, you're limited to 1 or 2 spectators. More than that, I would expect volunteers to be performing a little bit more crowd management. And spectators, I would, easily say spectators need to be a mass, right? And you can't really tell what family groups are family groups and households and what aren't. So
right.
I think that, trying to enforce the 6-foot distance, trying to space things out, trying to make sure that spectators aren't all gathering in one spot, but maybe, opening up multiple places to watch their athlete along the course, that will hopefully be a positive, right? So long term, they're able to see like, oh, there were all these other places that we could actually push people to, that make for a more exciting course. But those sorts of things I would expect. Volunteers they're going to have their hands full, frankly.
Yes.
Like they're going to have their hands full on this one.
You could also, here's my brilliant idea. You could have everyone only gets 1 spectator, and then their 1 spectator has to like Insta stream, live stream it for all their other friends and family.
Well, that would be lovely, right? That would be awesome. But yeah, I did like a Facebook Live a few weeks ago when I decided that Mighty Warhead Triathlon, which had moved from April 25th in El Paso, was moving to July 25th. And then in the end needed to cancel for a number of reasons. But part of it was, getting people to think about what does this look like if we're limiting spectators. It's a very tight space. So it feels fun, right, when you're finishing because you have crowds and, all that sort of thing. But if you start thinking about limiting spectators, if you start thinking about, we're kind of going to need to send you home right after you finish, there's not going to be a post-race gathering. The expo is going to be limited or non-existent. There's certain things that are just going to be so different that race, the spirit of it is not going to be captured in the same way. And so is it the choice to continue and kind of like redo what that looks like? Or is that one going to be so devastating to the spirit of what that event feels like and needs to be community-wise that it's no longer going to be the same event? So that was kind of where I was at on that one. But also July 25th is a lot sooner than September or December, right? So like thinking about how this is going to look then, is there fear and anxiety that will be associated with it of the, I want to do it, I don't know how comfortable I am, I'm going to try it anyway, I'm not sure, that is going to be very different in a couple months.
Right.
That may change. And especially as states reopen and as communities reopen and people kind of learn how to function in ways that they'll protect their health and safety while, being mindful of others, that might change,
Right.
but at this point, it just wasn't possible.
Before the second wave hits, Gabriela. And then everything
Right.
changes again.
Once we get out of the first wave.
Right.
Right.
All right. Is there anything else? Is there anything, that you want to tell athletes? Like the most common question you get, the issue that comes up all the time?
I think athletes sometimes might think that we have not made a decision because, there's, reasons for it or something like that. We're kind of operating under the same sorts of uncertainties and navigating, all the municipalities and permitting agencies. And some of them are wildly different even within the same city. So it may be that a smaller community is able to move forward with permitting and another one that is larger isn't, or the other way around. So I think as we're navigating that uncertainty, like I said, patience is really helpful, and kind of understanding that we may not, I get a lot of questions right now about the late August race, and I don't have a better answer, other than we're doing our best to make sure that we can make that decision no less than 2 months out from the race. And that to me has been kind of like the good measure of like, if I can at least provide that certainty, then we can move forward. But the uncertainty keeps changing, and so on our end as well as on theirs, we can't necessarily predict what's going to be happening, but we can do our best to figure it out as well as we can along the way.
Well, thank you so much for all the information and for, enlightening us a little bit to everything that goes into putting on a race.
Thanks for having me.
We're triathletes. We like to know how we're performing and how we could be better. We want all the data. And that's where Whoop comes in. Whoop is a fitness wearable that tracks your heart rate variability, sleep, activity levels, calories burned, and most importantly, recovery. Every day, Whoop gives you a recovery score based on how your body is recovered from the day before. So you can know if today's the day to tackle that huge workout or maybe adjust and pull back a little, take an extra nap. Whoop is offering 15% off right now with the code triathlete at checkout. Go to Whoop, WHOOP.com and enter triathlete at checkout to save 15%. Sleep better, recover better, and train better. Get faster right now with Whoop. All right, I'm here with Helle Frederiksen, who is the Olympian ITU long course world champ, famous in her own country of Denmark, right? Big deal?
I don't know if it's a big deal. I guess I'm known.
So you're in Denmark right now, and I think you're our second international athlete we've talked to. So, because we're based in the U.S., tell us what it's like, what it's been like there. What kind of restrictions have you been on? What's the situation?
So we've been pretty lucky in terms of the restrictions, like no restriction in terms of being able to go out to train, to run and ride. Obviously, the open water, the lakes and the ocean has been cold until now. So none of us has been swimming since March.
Okay.
But we can start again now. But else only social distancing, and then we obviously everything was closed, all the shops, pools, fitness center, etc. But else we've been fine. We've been it's nothing like Spain
right.
or France for that matter, which is very, very close to us, right? So when we saw that was happening, I think our government was they did the extremely hard cut. It's like everything is just closed and the border is closed. The border is still closed, but will reopen in a week or so.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't been too bad for you. No.
Not at all. You always go a little bit crazy, but I think that's because some things has been taken away from you that you're just used to. You can go out for dinner, you can go out for coffee, and you can meet up with friends and those things. I think that's why you feel isolated. But from the way that I've been living as a professional athlete, we are used to being on our own and training on our own often. And we also used to have high hygiene and always thinking about hand sanitizers and when you're traveling, you're very cautious of people that's coughing and snotting. So,
I know. We were joking. If everybody just lived like pro athletes, we probably
yeah,
would, cut this down really fast. So,
I know, and there wouldn't have been so many. I think also like influenza and the flu would
right.
be way less if all of us were like crazy like the pros are. But I mean, like we can't afford it. The immune system is not so good when we train this hard, and we just can't afford it with training and training and training, and then suddenly you're down with the flu or down with something, and it can cost a week, or you just can't afford it.
For sure.
So you just have to be so careful.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, how much training are you even doing right now? You retired last year, so what does retirement day look like?
Well, I guess I think I train like 10, maybe 12 hours a week.
Okay.
Something like that. So it consists of an hour or 2 hours of I call it exercise now. So I just go out because I love it. So it's either a run or a ride at the moment. Nothing in any structure, whatever I feel like doing. Also intensity wise, I just go whatever I feel. So it's really just coming to terms with in the beginning, from where it was training, it was structured, it was high intensity, to like, oh, there's no purpose with my training anymore. I don't even want to do anything. It took a little while, or maybe like a month or so, to kind of like realize how much I missed it. And I just needed to have, this is exercise, and I actually miss it. And this is me. And if I go out and exercise, I'm in a way better version of myself. I'm way more creative. Have way more energy, and I think I'm a better wife too.
Do you ever, like, if you're just doing what you feel like doing, do you ever feel like doing, I don't know, a super hard workout, or is it all easy?
Yeah, like not so hard workouts anymore. I don't miss the tasting blood and really going deep with like Olympic distance efforts, or the short like 2, 3, 4, 5 minute efforts on the bike or the run. I do not miss that stuff. I rode a little longer yesterday with my husband, and he was like, "Do you miss really going deep?" He actually asked me there, and I said the 70.3 effort, where you kind of, when you fit, you get into that good feeling of being strong, consistent. You can hold steady high watts, but it's kind of comfortable. You're comfortable about being uncomfortable.
Right.
Whereas a little higher intensity, or the Olympic distance intensity, oh no, I don't miss that stuff. So I don't really go there. Only if there is a hill I need to get over, especially on the run. I mean, I can't, like, there's so many hills here. So yeah, the heart rate gets up way quicker than usually.
Way faster.
Yeah.
So I was kind of joking that you're a big deal in Denmark, but it is a little true. Like when you retired last year, it was all over the news there, right? It's like, do people recognize you in the street? Like how big a deal was that?
Yeah, it was quite big. I mean, so yeah, it was really nice that I get recognized for whatever I have brought on the table, and obviously my results, but also maybe what I stand for as an athlete. And so yeah, it was. I was very happy the way that I kind of stepped out of the professional side of the sport.
And you, since then, I mean, I know you have a book deal. I know you like starting to launch a business. What have you been, doing with the other hours of your day that you're not exercising?
Yeah, I mean, we have been thinking about retirement for a while. Like, I mean, not when I should do it, but just like there are a life after sport, and there are many professional athletes that maybe don't think too much about it. And then the transition to the life after sport can be really hard. And it can leave you with a huge gap of like, what am I?
Right.
The identity of being a professional athlete, and being very good at something, and suddenly just being the average Joe. And like it's just it can be hard for people, and I was aware I didn't want that to happen. So we were thinking ahead, and trying to kind of plan what would I like to do when this is all over, because it has an end date. And I've always said I wanted to stop at the top, like of my results. Like I still wanted to feel that I still have good results in my sleep, and I still wanted to be like, okay, if I toe the line, the other girls know that I'm in for a good battle. I'm just not just in there to participate. And I think I stopped at the right time. It felt really right for me because I was starting to feel content.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always said, like, if you are content, you are also content about being second, for instance. And then you don't want to push yourself those last few percentages, right? And that's just not right when, it's your life and this is, what you're spending so many hours and you're so dedicated and you do everything 100%, 24/7. But if you're content deep down, it's time to find something else where you can kind of excel. And that was when we were starting to kind of, okay, what do I want to do?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, throughout my professional career, via the social media, but I like to give back, and I like to kind of be educational, and try and give some knowledge and experience to my followers. I believe that there are a lot of professional athletes that we have a lot to give, and we're capable of giving a lot to amateurs or other professionals that want to learn. And often it's difficult to figure out there what is good knowledge and what is bad knowledge. It is really a jungle.
Yeah. On the internet,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really. And what do you do? I mean, like, yeah, triathlon is not an old sport, and there are a lot of stuff out there. There's also a lot of fluff out there. So it's like, what's good and what's bad. And I just tried to be like as honest as I could, and then give as much back as I could on social media for many years. And I just did it because I liked it. It gave me something.
Right.
And then we just I've been coaching for many years also on the side of my triathlon.
So that kind of led to like your new boot camp, right? And like your program, you're doing like I know you're like starting a business and stuff, right?
Yeah, it led to that. So we just tried that out. We started in January with kind of the first 10 weeks to see, okay, can we, are there a market for amateurs out there that are looking to be educated and coached as a group, but still individually. And there were, and we had a big group, athletes from 49 countries signed up. So it was a very, very broad group of people, and it's been really moving. I mean, I have never thought that I could, touch so many people. Like, I mean, sitting everywhere in the world. And then the reviews that we got after the 10 weeks, and they would like to keep going. So that was why we were like, we kept the kind of the group and the community going through COVID, even though the 10 weeks stopped in March and mid-March. But because everyone were lost, right? What to do, what's the plans? And all our type A people, we like a plan, we like the structure, and it was gone. It's like, when can I do this? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we try to kind of keep the group going and kind of motivate people to still be sane and scale the training down a little bit, but still like have a group environment, have a community, have somewhere where you can share, okay, what's going on in Spain, what's going on in California, what's going on in the Philippines. And so, and then they said that they would like another phase. And then we came up with this we call You versus 2020 that starts in a week, actually.
You versus 2020. Yeah, it's a nice phrase for this year.
Exactly, because I mean, 2020, it's a challenge in itself, right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we're just thinking the first half of the year, could we just delete that?
Yeah.
Almost. So I think, and then it will be race specific, educational, both video content, but also training for different personalities or for different levels. We will have guest educators coming in, and then we will end up by having kind of a race, but you versus kind of yourself. And it's not mandatory to participate in that race, but it's to have a target to set a target, but because we still don't know, right? If we can get a target or we can have a race this year. Yeah. And then, it's just about, setting those small goals along the way so it makes sense and gives purpose what you're doing really in everything in life, right? Because that was the same when I stopped racing. I was just, okay. In terms of training,
right.
In terms of training, why should I? Why should I bother? But then I realized I just need, purpose of why I'm doing it now, right?
Okay. Yeah. Do you come up with like little goals for yourself then along the way? Now that you don't have like big training goals, are there little things you're trying to do?
Yeah, so I just saw that what it did to me with giving me energy and making me happy, and just I just came back to being like a healthy, fit, normal person.
A normal person.
Fine. It was really fine for me. It was actually nice to kind of feel like it's completely fine.
Yeah.
I don't have like a physical goal right now as a sporting goals. I probably will one day.
Right.
That I will miss it. But right now I'm just completely happy sharing and giving people motivation for them to go out and push themselves and hit targets. It gives me value and it gives me purpose. So that's fine. Other people's turn to work hard.
And you just stand there and tell them what to do.
Exactly. And it's amazing. It's really nice.
Sorry, go
when
ahead.
it moves me, it's good, right? Then you're doing the right thing. If you can get like butterflies in your belly when you see an athlete running a new PB, you're doing some things that's right for you, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, you're doing this camp, you're working on your own like business. I know you also wrote a book, right? And didn't you just start a book tour? What's that like? I can't even imagine a triathlete on a book tour in the US because triathlon's like not that big in the US, but
yeah, I know. I got contacted by a big Danish publishing house before I actually retired. And I then informed them that I wanted to retire in 3 months, and they said, but then it's even more perfect because then we can get your whole story. So we started writing that straight after I stopped. So it's been it's coming out in 2 weeks now, actually.
Okay.
And I finished it like 3 weeks ago or something. When it went into the print and with all the pictures, and it's been great. It's been a long process. It's obviously harder than you think to write a book, because you're very like critical. You want to make it good. But it's been a great learning process for me. Also, I think it's helped me to put my career into perspective. Whereas I think if I was to write this book either in the middle of my career or in a year, I wouldn't have got the same out of it. I also had way more time to dedicate to sit hours and days after end to write, and yeah.
Oh man! So did you write it yourself then?
I wrote it together with a journalist.
Okay.
So that the publishing house kind of gave me. So we've done it together because he's like more of a storyteller, and you need a story, one that can tell a story. Because if it was just me, I would be way too like fact-based, coming from my science background. So it's much better to kind of soften it up and make it more story-like.
Right. No, that makes sense. I guess we should probably talk some about your career and your history, for all of our listeners who don't necessarily know as much about you. I mean, you started out as a swimmer very young, right? You were on like the Danish national team. You were going to try and make the Olympics as a swimmer.
Yeah.
And then you got burned out and you actually like quit sport completely, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Already when I was, 18, 19 in swimming, I stopped swimming. I was just, I got on a national team already when I was 12. So I've been very like structured and focused in a very young age. And I think that most of my teenage years went with swimming before and after school, and being the easiest teenager on the planet. So, I mean, I think I just needed to be young.
Right.
I just wanted to, let go of all the structure and restriction and being able to say yes to go out with your friends and just not have that pressure on yourself where you want to perform all the time. And then, I finished, I guess you would call it college.
Right. University, whatever.
something like that. And then I got into university, took my bachelor degree in sports science, my master degree in human nutrition. But as I was finishing my bachelor degree, I slowly got into triathlon.
Okay, how'd you end up getting into triathlon?
Yeah, I was a personal trainer and a spinning instructor at a big gym.
Okay.
And I had like a group of people that always came on my classes, and they saw a big poster on the wall in the gym saying there's a race called Girls with Power. And it was just a little triathlon, local little triathlon only for women. And then I just signed up for that thing and ended by winning it. So on Everything Borrowed, you know how we all start in something that a bike that's 3 sizes too big, and whatever, big baggy clothes when you swim in that, and you know how it is. But I guess I just got like a little sparkle bag of like, oof, this is actually quite cool, you know, the racing element of things again, and I maybe realized that I've missed it. But still, it took me another year and a half before I really got into it, where I actually moved to Australia, to the Gold Coast, to stay there for half a year. Actually, it was in between my bachelor degree and my master degree. And then I suddenly realized how wildly big triathlon is at the Gold Coast, and how amazing community they have down there, and how they are just active, up early. Kids are doing triathlon like kids. Like in Denmark, it was like we were in the 20s before we started triathlon in Denmark. So I got really inspired, and I got on in a squad down there under a very good coach called Jenny Alcon. And it was actually Annabelle Luxford that introduced me to all this stuff. And on this team, there was also Ashley Gentle. So it's funny, I met them, you know, and Ashley was this tiny little girl that was so fast, so fast on the run. So it's funny to have seen them. And at that point, actually, Annabelle Luxford was the number one in the world. It was 2006 on Olympic distance. So I was absolutely starstruck that she wanted to help me out.
Ashley must have been like 17, like way younger than you. I'm trying to do the math.
She was like 12 or 13 at that point, but she was just leading the track sessions. Like none of us could follow her at that point even. She was so fast already, and it was just a little girl, right?
That's crazy.
Tiny little girl. So no, I've told her the story, and she obviously can remember, but it's funny how. And also, I mean, with Annabelle, like how many times we raced each other since that time. It's unbelievable how, you know, full circle. Yeah. So, I mean, triathlon is just a side note. It is a great sport that people are just really open-minded and helpful.
Yeah.
Even though that you are the best in the world, you are down to earth to help people.
That makes sense.
And that's just
nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And
so you kind of like ended up on the squat. You like worked your way up through the ITU ranks, right? Like you did. That's where you started, was ITU.
Yeah. Because I had the Olympic dream,
right,
as a kid, right, and I'd never made it in swimming. So it was when I got on the national team straight away, that 2006, and the Danish coach, the national coach said that he think I could make it. So there was all about that until I made it in London. And then after London, so 13, I switched to non-graft.
Right.
Yeah.
But you actually had to overcome a lot of injuries to make it to London, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of all of them. There was like a spinal disc prolapse, which I don't even know what that is. You like had really bad asthma. You had a really bad bike crash. How did you come through all that? I mean, the spinal disc prolapse, you were like bedridden, like couldn't. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. That like it's like a herniated disc. Okay. So all the way down in the bottom of my lower back. Yeah, already after a year, I got diagnosed with that and had half a year of lying in bed, really, and then building up from that. And most of the doctors that was around me at that point really said, "Helle, maybe you should do something else. Maybe this is not for you." And actually, you know, I've been in the sport for a year, really, more or less, and I could obviously see where they were coming from, but at the same time, I was like, no, you know, I've just got the taste of this thing, this amazing sport, and I just believe that I can be good at it, and I love it. So I just wanted to prove them wrong, and also see if I could actually achieve something in this sport. And yeah, so I did so many injuries. Yeah, as you said, I had some asthma issues, but I was involved in quite a lot of crashes
Oh,
in the
really?
ITU, and that kind of kept coming back to my back issue. So whenever I hit the ground, I got issues with my back and my hip. So it was almost always back related. And then I had ton of bad luck. I mean, it's all in the book, all my crazy stories. But I mean, like all the defeats and all the downs you've had. It's all a part of that journey to reaching success. I mean, I think you value your success and achieving your goals when you know how hard you worked and how difficult it's been to get there, and how many times you've actually doubted, and how many times you did not want to come up after you've crawled in under the couch, not literally, but you just want to lie in there and think this is not true. Like, I mean, how, again,
Right.
something again you have to overcome. Like, why can I not get a straight line sometimes to some results? So yeah, through the first 6 years of my career, maybe 7, it was, wow, that was bumpy. uh, and I would also say it was bumpy when I did long course and non-draft, but nowhere near as bumpy as it was in the beginning. And I also think, coming from being a swimmer and no impact sport and being in water your whole life, to actually have to carry yourself, I think that played a big impact as well. And as a swimmer, you are just cardiovascularly strong, but your bones and your ligaments, they are not as strong, and your muscles as your cardiovascular system. So you just push yourself, and you can, but your structure just can't follow that fast, and you just need to be patient and have respect that things takes time. And that, I guess, that was hard sometimes to listen to that. And as you get older and more mature, you start to learn.
Yeah, you start to learn. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think it was, I mean, obviously you kind of kept at it, and it was worth it. It all worked out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we moved to US in 2013 and lived over there for 4 years. And that was when it really excelled my career on non-draft and 70.3. And at that point, there was still Olympic distance non-draft. So Live Fitness Series and High V was there. And I loved the combination of doing 70.3 and then Olympic distance non-draft. It really made me fast on the half distance as well. So the combination of that was amazing for me. And we had a house in Claremont, Florida, where I trained mostly with Alicia Kay, which was also a non-draft specialist in Olympic distance as well. And then we had an apartment in Boulder. So we were just, the best of the both worlds, I think. Boulder in the summer, or the spring and late summer. And then we went back to Florida when it got too cold in Boulder. So we were living the life. I mean, we loved it. I loved my 4 years in the States for sure.
And I mean, that's an interesting question, because I've always been curious. Did you feel like triathlon is viewed differently in the US versus in Europe? Is it like a different perception?
Yeah. I think firstly, Ironman is a huge thing in the States. Really, like Olympic distance is not as big in the normal population, in the general population, where I think Olympic sport in Denmark is bigger. Not in triathlon. But I think, and then I think in general, the Americans they recognize sports people more than in Denmark. In Denmark, it's all about, you need an education. You definitely need an education to fall back on if your sporting career is not going to work. And they always like, so I'm a professional athlete. Oh, okay, so what do you do next to that? I mean, nothing. It's my job. Like, so whereas in the US, it was completely different. If you said that you also had a master's degree, they're like, wow, how can you do both? That's insane. I mean, why don't you just focus on your sport? I mean, so that's completely different. And I love that way in the States, where it was like, you really get recognized for being an athlete and going hard after your goals in sport. The Danes are getting a little better.
They're getting more into sport. Okay.
Yeah. Or just really just respecting and recognizing, the hard work and how difficult it actually is to make a living from your sport.
Right. Those years that you just mentioned were also some big money because you won the High V Cup, which was huge money back in or not cup, but the race, huge money back in the day. The Bahrain race, I think you won like $300,000 in prize money that year, which was the most at the time, right?
Yeah. That year, not exactly 300, but I won 2 times $100,000 in these 2 races just, and then I had a lot of other good races that year. So no, it was a crazy year, and I was the most winning female triathlete that year in prize purse. So I did well that year, and I was racing really well, yeah, it was obviously amazing to feel that you found all that hard work and all, as I spoke about, all the defeats, and then suddenly you're riding it and it's going well and you are racing well and you're winning races and you just found that recipe. What does it take for you to figure it out? Because that takes time and it's all different from person to person, what you need and how you need to train and eat and recover.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that was just amazing when that finally happened. But then, the year after was completely the opposite. From mid 2015, I was basically injured for 1.5 years. So if that was due to 14 and racing too much, or if it was due to many other things, I don't know.
Okay.
But it was definitely good that I did well in 14 to kind of manage the 1.5 year. That was tough.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of ups and downs, I think, being a pro triathlete.
Absolutely. And I think and there again back to the athletes and the triathletes, that we really help each other, and when you see some of your fellow competitors that they're out for a long time, and often we reach out to each other and trying to help each other, encourage each other to keep going, and even if there are similar injuries that you have had, you try to help them out. And actually in that period where I was injured with my knee for that long time, the same time Lindsay Corbin was injured with her, she had a stress fracture
right.
for a very, very long time. It was around the same time there. And it is when you're out for that long, when you then finally see your fellow competitor or friend back in racing, there is nothing better. You're just like, oh, finally, I'm so happy for her. It's like, yes, she's back, because you know what it feels. It's just so tough to be in it because you never know if it actually you're going to get out of it.
Right.
When it takes a very, very long time, when it pulls you out for that long time, that is tough to hang on for sure.
Obviously you came back and you won the ITU long course world championship in Denmark. I think that was probably a big deal, right? It was a highlight.
It was a big deal because there was obviously a lot of pressure from the media, and it was a good feel and on home soil, and I raced really well. So my performance was really, really good, and it was a big day. So just that I hung in after 15 and came back racing late 16, and then actually started to roll again, and I got another, how much is that, 3.5 years of very good racing before I retired. I'm so pleased I did that, because that has definitely made me satisfied of my achievement. If I stopped when it was looking at its worst there in 15, I would have been looked back at my career being maybe sad that I did not, because I was really riding it when I was just got injured, right? I was doing so well, and I felt like I got torn. I just got pulled away from doing well and winning racing, and as I said, just found that recipe, and then suddenly I was like, couldn't even stand on my 2 feet. So it's from one extent to another, and I guess that is often professional racing, right? You're high, and then you're that low.
I think, isn't that one of the hardest parts about retiring, is that you don't have the extreme emotional highs and lows anymore? You're just more like level.
You're leveled, yeah. As I said, right now I'm fine by being leveled. in terms of my own physical needs, but I think it might come again where I'm like, maybe. And yeah, I might. I've always said I would like to run a fast marathon, so let's see if I suddenly is gonna start to run a little bit more structured. But right now, I'm fine with being just leveled.
What do you, if you were going to look back on your career, what do you think was like, what do you feel like was your biggest accomplishment, your best?
Oh, well, I think I was my consistency through many years from, I'll say, from 13 till, except the period where I was injured. But from 13 till I finished my career, I think that's probably some that I'm mostly proud of. That whenever I towed the line, I was always competitive, and I was always there to challenge for the win. And if I have to pull some races out, I would say like my Hy-Vee win in 14 Challenge Bahrain.
Right.
I was racing really fast at 3:55 on that half
Right.
distance.
What is the deal with Bahrain? Why is it always so fast?
Yeah, like, so I think we're racing point to point, right? So it's not that it's downhill, but the wind direction can obviously play a factor. I didn't feel that it was a tailwind or anything in that point, but maybe there was a little bit. When you're riding fast, you don't feel,
right,
tailwind like that. But it was just a fast day and fierce competitive. And Jodie Swallow and Rachel Joyce or Jodie Conner, I mean, we were definitely racing each other hard, and then you get the best out of yourself, right? You are pushing yourself beyond the limit. And I think for me that day, I raced beyond my capability at that point. And that was also, it came as a surprise to me that I shouldn't be able to race that well already, like in my kind of progression in half distance racing. So that was also why it stands out to be a big deal. And also running a 1:17 flat. And it was, fast, Lisa Norden, Jodie Stimson, Melissa Hauschild. There was just really fast runners as well. And I was just running away from anyone. So, when you do that, when it just comes together, there's those few days in your career where you're like, wow, this still gives me goosebumps to think back on those things. So that day, then I will say, obviously making it to the Olympics in London was a massive achievement just to get there. And then, ITU World Championship in Denmark in 18. I'd say those four are probably the biggest memories that I have. But there are so many. Even the downs can also be all the defeats. But I also say the travel and the friendships and the places. Many times when I go out, I'm like, oh, that reminds me that path in Boulder, or that reminds me of that road. It's I think you've just got some experiences and memories of a lifetime that if I've just stayed in Denmark and just got a normal job after my master's degree, I would never have had all these things. So I feel fortunate that you are able to get probably two careers, different ones, and
Yeah, I mean, you've had a lot of different careers, right? Are you going to use your master's degree now, or?
Yeah, so I've been using it throughout my career,
coaching,
actually.
right.
Yeah, for the coaching, but also myself, really. I trained myself the last 2.5 years of my career. Okay. Ben was looking over my shoulder, but I did all the programming, making all the programs, all the structure, and also nutrition, all the nutrition strategy for races. I did it all for myself, and obviously trial and errors, and been using it on athletes as well for the last 11 years. So I use it all the time, and I'm also using it now in this boot camp. and so, I mean, yeah, physiology and nutrition is all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
And I really like it. I really this is my passion, and it's always been. And I mean, I was just lucky that I could also use it for my profession for some time as well.
Well, okay, so we usually finish with like a would you rather question. And so here's my question for you, having listened to you. Would you rather coach somebody to like a national title, world title, or win one yourself?
Oof. That is difficult. I mean, right now, I would rather coach someone to win a big title, because it takes a lot from yourself. And now, as I said, I'm content, and I've been there, and it's been amazing. But now I want to give it to another person or other people to achieve a huge goal of theirs. That gives me a lot of meaning right now.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I would rather myself a while ago, but now I would rather coach people to achieve their dreams.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, and I think it's been educational for everybody. So
yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, stay healthy.